Welcome everybody to the second day of the Grace Paley Symposium. I just want to, we're going to start out with a toast by Sonia Friedman. Sonia Friedman is a documentary filmmaker and Academy Award nominee whose film, Grace, has been playing since yesterday in the Hirshon Suite in the exhibition space. The film will be playing all day until 5 p.m., so you're welcome to stop by anytime and watch all of the film or parts of the film. Sonia?
Well, everybody who is a friend of Grace, as I was, and a lot of you were, just remember her as she just still fills our life every day or every week. And her spirit is just indomitable. And Grace was not only, as everyone knows, very funny, but she was a deeply committed and concerned and courageous person. And one of her great qualities was her ability to empower us. When you were in Grace's presence, you really believed you could change the world. You really believed it. In Grace's honor, because Grace was a poet before she was a fiction writer and continued to be a poet all her life, I think she would have liked to have one of her poems read, so I'm going to read one of her poems. It's not her wonderful voice, but her wonderful words. There they go, beginning life all over again. The world is a cowering coward of a place, won't stand up for itself. What do they have in mind creating hope? Wrong, anyway. Hope was always there, fluttering its little pock-marked flag. Why be so grandiose? Just do something, now and then. Thank you.
Hazel Clark, who is Professor of Design and Fashion Studies, as well as the Dean of the School of Fashion at Parsons, is going to introduce the film. Hazel, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I have to say that, just a bit of personal bio, I'm only Dean of the School of Fashion for this semester, and I actually normally work with the MA Fashion Studies students, which we'll talk about in a moment. I'm saying that because this afternoon has two parts, I think, as you know. So first we'll watch the documentary and then have question and answer. And then we'll go to the room next door to look at the yearboxes, the original yearbox from '69, and then a yearbox that my students have created, which we'll speak more about then. But first, I'm really delighted that Terry's invited me to introduce the film, and also really delighted to be part of the of this project. I must say that when I got the chance to see Women of '69 Unboxed, it really, swayed me that, I wanted to be part of the project and for my students to be part of the project. So I'm also, we're all delighted that the three producers of the film are here today, and I just want to introduce them very briefly. Liz Roman-Galice, who's executive producer and is also an award-winning online documentary filmmaker, maker of Timeline, a movie on women's advancement. She's a reporter for the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg News, and the author of Women Like Us, which is about the first Harvard Business School class to be 10% female. When I read that 10% female, I thought that was a misprint, but of course it's not a misprint. And then Jane Starts, one of the other of the three producers. Her productions have included Ella Enchanted, Tuck Everlasting, Indian in the Cupboard, and she's also been involved in the production of Scholastic's Magic School Bus TV series, as well as having 3 Golden Globe nominations and 6 Emmys. And both Liz and Jane were women of '69. They were the part of the class of '69 from Skidmore, so they're obviously very involved in the documentary film in various ways, personally as well as professionally. And then thirdly, the other producer and also the director of the movie, Peter Barton, who of course was not the class of '69 at Skidmore, but he was a Dartmouth man from 1963, I read, so he has academic credibility too. But joking apart, Peter has to his credit 3 Emmy nominations, the Edward R. Murrow Award for Names Can Really Hurt Us, a CBS TV special, and first prize in the Georgetown Film Festival for the Suicide editions. But also in terms of this wonderful film we're about to see, the movie itself, which Peter was, of course, the director of, as well as being one of the 3 co-producers, has just won Best Documentary Feature at the 2015 Queen's World Film Festival. And Peter was nominated for the Best Director of Documentary Feature. So already, you know, without seeing the movie, lots of accolades to the people who produced it and directed it. And having seen it, I know it's 1 hour long, and I know you're going to be completely enchanted and moved as I was. So without more ado, please enjoy. So, first of all, congratulations. It's I'm sort of choked, you know, just watching it. But I think the first question should be to just tell us a little bit about the background to the film and how you came to make it, because it's, you know, your histories as well as your profession. So, just can you give us a little bit of background to its origins?
Well, it started here with me.
You might want to plug that in.
Hello?
How about this one?
This one's on.
This, you have no wire. There we go.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Well, it started with me. I had always loved the '69 Yearbox that we produced the year I graduated. And I kept it safe and sound for a number of years in its own little place on the shelf, and would not disturb the pages because I thought it was so artistically done. And at some point during the early part of the last decade, I felt at the time of my 35th reunion that it would be a wonderful idea to turn the Yearbox into a documentary movie. That stayed with me for a number of years, and when I left my last job, I decided that it would be time to do it. I approached my classmate Jane Starts because I knew she was in the film and TV business. We talked, we got together, and we got together with Peter. That's how it began.
Thank you. Jane and Peter, do you want to say anything about the origins? Do you want to add anything? Give us any more insights? Or the process as well?
Yeah.
Is this working?
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Okay.
This one's working.
I can figure that out.
Yeah, I would. I typically do fiction films and feature films and television work, mostly for families and kids. And when Liz approached me, I was very intrigued by the idea of sort of finding out what happened to these women who I had been involved with at such a seminal age, and all of us, it was really a tumultuous period, and everybody, a lot of the women I knew were working, and I just found, I thought it would be interesting to see what was their personal story over that period of time. And I think what we found out was the film sort of took on a life of its own. It became, in a sense, less about Skidmore and more about, you know, the experience post-college and what it was like to be a woman during that period, which was very revolutionary. And the thing, I guess, that I find so surprising is that I have 2 daughters and a son, but I'll talk about my daughters because, you know, most women today, although they're very strong women, most young girls today do not identify at all with being feminists, and that's a dirty word for some reason, which I still baffles me. And, you know, it's the same battles. It hasn't really changed. I think girls, women today still face the same issues about work. They may be in the marketplace now, but they're not getting more assistance in terms of handling the dual roles of wife and mother and worker, and still feel, I think, that that's still a struggle. So it's been an interesting journey.
Yeah, I showed a couple of years ago a movie I had done in 1971. Part of the first Women's Film Festival, and some of the women in the audience, of course, responded. a lot of the younger women didn't seem to feel that this was their fight, that they had won. The war was over. Since then, there have been in the headlines the war on women, and the 60s seems to become more and more relevant to me. There's been a war we were lied into in Iraq. The civil rights movement is now reinvigorated because of a lot of horrible things that have been happening in the country. So it's not just nostalgia. It is very much present in our lives, and I wanted also this to be part of my legacy. I want to do movies because it's immortality. It's going to live on after me, I hope. And actually, I looked up something that Grace Paley wrote, which is relevant, certainly to me, because I'm about to become a grandpa twice, and I really want my children, my children's children, to understand those battles. And she wrote, when they speak to the grandchild, they say, yes, there will be revolution. Then there will be revolution. Then once more. Then the earth itself will turn and cry, ouch, I have been made sick. But you, my little bud, must flower and save it. And that's the way I feel about this legacy, this legacy of struggle and discomfort that we had in the 60s, that I want to make people uncomfortable and keep them moving and protesting and trying to change the world, as many of the women talk about in the movie.
Thank you all. I'd like to open it up for questions. You've got some microphones, but also for any reflections any members of the audience have, as well as questions. So feel free to reflect and share. Thank you.
Questions or comments from the audience?
The interviewing in the film is obviously very expert, and it's clear that in all cases it was very much a conversation between the people in the film and someone off camera. I'm wondering who that off-camera person was. Was it always the same person?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, it was pretty much me.
Peter and I sat in on most of the interviews. Jane joined us for some of them. And generally the way the interview would flow would be that Peter would begin the conversation and it would become a conversation. The person was put at ease. And then when that was finished, I did get a chance to ask my own questions. I came from this project from a completely different perspective. Both Jane and Peter are filmmakers and visual artists, if you will. I came from a reporting background. And I always need to square away the inconsistencies and get at the facts and make sure 1 and 1 add up to 2. So I would come in at the end and try to resolve some of the inconsistencies and loose ends that I felt had arisen during the interview. Sometimes that yielded dramatic results. The crying scene that you saw at the beginning of the movie was a result of an effort at the very end in trying to resolve some inconsistencies.
I think the thing that I feel most proud of about the film and is how completely unguarded and open and vulnerable all these women allow themselves to be. And I have to say it's to Liz and Peter's credit that they did feel so comfortable that you're seeing this slice of really its history, but through such a personal place and such a personal voice. You know, I think that they were very generous and very honest in allowing us into things to look at things in their life which were probably difficult, sometimes painful, sometimes very personal. So that I felt was a real honor for all of us in making the film.
Let me say one more thing. I think this might be a very good time to point out that there is one of our subjects in the audience now, Barbara Levy-Lankelis, who was in the movie, had curly hair in the movie, and has since straightened her hair. So you might want to catch up with her later and get her perspective as well.
We've been so thrilled that the students at Parsons have created their own yearbox. And in thinking about all this, it occurred to us that the concept of the yearbox really was way ahead of its time. It was part of the digital age, because when you do a yearbox, it's nonlinear, it's random access. You can take part of that out, throw it away, you can put it on the wall as if it were Facebook. You can rearrange. It is a lot like the way a computer works now, as opposed to a book where you usually go through from start to finish. So that just occurred to us recently.
I wondered if the yearbox continued as a tradition, or if it was for one time, that was it, until today, until now.
That was the only one ever done at Skidmore College. And frankly, I haven't found one done at any other school, although there may be one out there, and I'd like finding another Earth somewhere out there.
We were in this was amazing to me, maybe around 10 years ago, we were in an antiquarian bookstore in North Adams, and there was the yearbox. And I was flabbergasted, and the guy said, "Oh, that's a collector's item." I said, "Wow."
I wanted to say how much I like the film.
Thank you.
But I have a question and then a comment. So I'll do my question and comment together. My question is the effect of having gone to an all-women's college, which we know there is very little single-sex education now, and the empowerment that in my own experience, probably gave you. And the second, which is kind of a question as a criticism, why is it that you always get to marriage and babies in the film? I don't really, there are questions that I can't imagine that you would have asked of a male.
Well, I'll try. I think one of the things that impressed me about this symposium on Grace Paley, who I came to know over the past day and a half, was despite her strong activist involvement and her clear support of women's roles in the workplace and in the wider world, she certainly did not ignore the importance of relationships and children. And I think that is a central part of a woman's life. I think it would be dishonest not to have gone there. I feel had we done a movie on men, I would feel equally strongly about bringing up that topic. Jane?
No, I was going to say I agree. I agree with Liz. I think particularly for women of that period, that was an extremely, extremely important element of their lives in terms of their socialization. It's just a fact. You know, there are a lot more women now who are deciding not to have children or to have children on their own, you know, or to be in a variety of different relationships. But I just really think that of that generation, that was, still is a really important part. And I agree with Liz that if we went to Dartmouth, you know, I think men probably wouldn't ask that question of their classmates, but hopefully women would ask them.
I'm also a graduate of '69, and while I really admire people who are overtly involved in the struggle, I guess I would look at my own life as someone who was sort of covertly making a stand, because I mean, you know, it was the thing to do to demonstrate against the war and to demonstrate for women's rights, but I wasn't a complete activist. And yet, when I graduated from college, in order to kind of get away from a domineering father, I chose to go live in Taiwan, because I had studied Chinese at college. And in 1969, when I went there, you know, it was a very brave decision for anyone, much less a woman, to make. And I think probably having gone to a women's college and having that confidence coming out of the school, despite, you know, my own feelings of, you know, I need to get out of this box that I'm in at home, really gave me an ability to go do something that changed my life forever. I mean, it made me realize that I could do anything in the world, because I went to Asia. There were no phones, there were no computers. I was basically on my own, finding a place to live, something to do, and to learn the language in a very alien culture. And after that, I think my whole life developed because I knew I could do anything I wanted to do. So I think Skidmore was really important in that, but I don't feel like I was making a political statement. I was just trying to live my life.
There was a lot of covert going on back then. I mean, the active face was out there for all of us to see. Civil rights, anti-war movement, feminism, sexual revolution. Much of it we participated in. Some of it we even instigated as a generation. But many, many of us individually were not out there on the front lines. We were in our dorms and in our classrooms, taking it in and watching it transform us and trying to figure out what to do in the face of it. So I think your experience was probably more the norm than the active protesters that you saw in the Grace Paley movie yesterday. Importance of women's...
It's also a filmmaker's choice that you look for conflict and you look for struggle and you look for people who are trying to break out of the box. But that's not everybody.
But people do it in different ways, I think is the point.
Yeah.
Right.
And the comment on, to comment on the all-women's education which was raised by you and the previous individual, women's colleges were central to the education of women mid-century. Most of the finest universities were closed to women, and our best shot at getting a top-notch education was very often the women's college route. It's sad to see them slowly disappear.
Hi, I was very impressed by this movie, and I'm wondering what kind of distribution possibilities something like this has, because I think it really speaks to a lot of, I have nothing to do with Skidmore, and I just found it really fascinating.
I think all the microphones work.
I don't, do they? I don't think so. They're not plugged in.
Connected.
They're not plugged in?
It's okay.
Jane, just to start,
out of
I just
three.
wanted to say one more thing. One thing that, I got married very late in life, and we went to the 35th reunion, my husband and I, and he came back from that reunion and said, you know, this was a great school. You had so many interesting classmates, and they all were doing different things. I mean, he was so impressed with the quality of the women and the life choices that they'd made, even if they did get married and have children, but just they were so interesting to him and so active and so engaged. It was it was interesting from my perspective to have someone come in, you know, 35 years later and then comment on the class.
Well, it's interesting because, like, going back, I had the same experience because, and then I'll answer your question about distribution. When I was in college, and I think a lot of it was a product of being at a women's college, I became this maniacal scholar and student. And I think because I had no distractions, male distractions, I didn't care what I looked like. I went to class in my pajamas, you know, that it really gave me this like blip in my life to really develop a life of the mind. So, you know, when I had been in high school, I had sort of been a teen queen, and there was all the concomitant things that go with that. But just sort of stepping out of this larger society totally developed who I was and who I am. But in terms of the distribution, we're just starting off on that front. So any ideas would be, any help would be greatly appreciated. We are going to, the film is going to air on 2 regional PBS stations. We're hoping to get a national PBS viewing. We think ideally the film is best suited for colleges, for gender studies classes, women's studies. It would be great for community groups with older, you know, for older members or just for the general population. So that's, we'd like it to get out to both older people and younger people.
I think another good submarket would be the class of '69 on colleges across the country will be holding their 50th reunion in just a few years. So at those reunions, it could become the basis for discussion and exploration, and also a look at ways to possibly give back to the next generation.
You know, what's great about a documentary is that it's a voyage of discovery, and you don't have much of a roadmap. We started out focusing on sort of the past and what women had done over the course of their lives, and realized that these women were turning 65, that was a big watershed for them. And then we started thinking, God, all these old people in the world, what's going to become of them? Like us, what's going to become of us? And how do we think about ourselves? And is that changing over time? And is there such a thing as a third wind, which we kind of diagnosed along the way? And that opened up a whole new area of thought that hadn't occurred to us at the beginning, because we were sort of looking back. And now, with these women, we're looking ahead, and we're curious to see what's going to become of them.
Question over here.
I just wanted to make a comment, and that was back in the 70s at women's conferences, there would frequently somebody who would stand up and say, well, who's going to mind the children? Namely, this issue of child care with women in the workplace is something that I would love to see politicized.
Yeah.
Why can't our country have decent, wonderful child care? I mean, it's no longer, I mean, women have to work. They have to be in the labor force. It's not as if somebody is stepping out of line, but I just think that that is one of the critical issues. And I don't know what Grace would have done, but she knew that women to live full lives needed supports. That's just my comment.
I just want to say something. I so agree with you. To me, that really is one of the biggest hurdles remaining. Just, you know, from my own experience with younger women, I know I don't think things are any better at all on that front. If you don't have family, you know, that can help you take care of your children, if you're working, you need to find an option, and all of them are hugely, hugely expensive. And ultimately, I think that the burden does fall on the mother, just for reasons of psychological guilt that they feel, you know, probably worse. I'm making that leap. But it is just remarkable that we haven't done anything in this country to care more about families.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a very moving documentary. And I graduated in 1970 from upstate school, State University. And so I can both identify and also feel a little removed from the experiences. I could identify certainly with the women at their current age. But I remember at that time in my university, there was a lot of social activism, but there was also so much distrust of organizations, authority, business, and so many of the students that I knew, dropped out. And I was kind of an artist and a hippie for many years till I found my voice and my profession. And I'm just wondering, in terms of Skidmore, if there was at that time a little bit more trust in society than in some of the other schools where people really were not going to work and doing Peace Corps and going all kinds of alternative things, that people really just did not trust the system. And in 1970 at Cornell University, I don't know if anyone from Skidmore went to this, there was a symposium called After the Revolution, and I've always remembered it, and it had the most wonderful, wonderful programs that we were going to have universal child care and get paid for housework, and women would be liberated and men would be liberated and the war would end. I mean, I was so jazzed up and I was so excited about the future. I remember that so well, and it's pretty depressing to come to terms with where we're at, even where we're at with women's roles, still sexual harassment, still rape, still racism. I mean, what the hell happened, So the other question is what parameters did you choose the women who actually were in the documentary? Were they known to you, or was it because of their careers? I just was wondering about that.
Oh, wow. Lots there. I think in the class as a whole, to address your first comments, there was a split. There was definitely a group of women in that class who had come from a very traditional perspective and left with a traditional perspective, that they were going to marry, have children, and that would be it, without the questioning that you articulated. I think, on the other hand, and increasingly as the 4 years went on, that you saw more and more beginning to identify with the various developments that were occurring outside of the campus and then within the campus. And you saw gradually women who were going to do more than just fulfill the traditional role. They were going to go to graduate school. They were going to play music rather than just listen to music. They were going to maybe make a choice about not marrying or even not having kids. I think the split was part of what fascinated me about this particular group. Anybody else?
I think your impatience is important. When John Kennedy was killed, I was a full-time artist, and I decided then that you couldn't leave politics to the politicians, that you had to get involved, because those politicians got killed or corrupted or turned into idiots, and in a democracy, you had to do something. So I did a bunch of things. I was in the Peace Corps. I spent several years as a full-time revolutionary, ready to pick up the gun. That didn't quite happen, that revolution, but I would say it's happening. It's still happening somewhere, and I love to use my filmmaking skills to try to create change, even if it's just a little bit, and that's my hope.
Hi.
Yeah, why you chose.
Oh, why we chose, who we chose?
Oh, yeah.
All right. We began by going to Saratoga Springs for about 3 weeks because there was a group of women from the class who had settled in that area, Saratoga and the surrounding area. We also felt that would be a great opportunity to interview former professors, administrators, and current administrators and professors. That became the core of the group. Then we, Jane and I, each had certain people that we remembered from college as being in some way interesting. And the SDS leader, Diane Jazuski, was a recommendation from Jane's. Karen Glazier, the nun who cried at the beginning, was in my dorm freshman year. And these were people that I remembered as being extremely interesting. Another outlet was we looked at the pictures, and some of the more interesting of the pictures, the natural question arose, well, what happened to that woman beyond the picture, in the picture? And so we went after the women in the very interesting pictures. Some were people because of their roles, such as the yearbook editor certainly had to be interviewed and was cooperative and wonderfully supportive all the way. We did another segment of women in New York because we felt women in New York might have a much different perspective than upstate New York. And then we cherry-picked from women around the country who, again, fit that interesting mold. Certainly, when Penny Chisholm won or received a National Medal of Science, we felt that we really did want to talk to her.
I'm sorry, could I just ask if this should be the last question, Terry? Yeah, if we can make this, yeah, absolutely, please do.
Thank you very, very much, and I really urge you to get this film out. I come from an earlier generation. I went to the most anti-feminist college you could imagine. Harvard was co-ed from 1943 on, nobody knows. But they kept it a secret because they didn't want to tell anybody. But I was interested in how much the movement helped you. I can, as somebody who didn't have a movement, when I went back to grad school, they did not know what to do with me. They really had trouble, and along the line, I remember people saying, oh, she must be a feminist, and I didn't know that I was. But I really think all the generations need to hear it. The media is so tempting for girls not to be serious, that everything you can do to keep them going. And I think you were a wonderful interviewer. You got them so relaxed. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
So on your behalf, if I can just say very many thanks again to Jane and Liz and Peter. They're here so you can have some informal conversation. So now we're going to move out of this room into the little room on the left to look at the original Yearbox and to look at our box of 2015 and to tell you a little bit about that project. So please join us. Thank you.
Yeah, please don't go away. You must see what's in the other room.
Thank you.